What's up, everyone? Welcome to the very first episode of Pixels Past, the podcast where we dust off the cartridges and we dig into the epic origin stories behind the games that raised us. I am Nick Baldwin,
And
and
I'm
you are
Tristan.
Tristan.
I'm Tristan. Each week, we're traveling back in time to relive the glory days of retro gaming, covering the wild backstories, unsung heroes, and the creative chaos behind the pixels.
We're starting strong today with the game that literally saved the video game industry, and no first episode of a podcast would be able to start off. Well, no first episode of a podcast about video games would be able to start off with any other game other than Super Mario Brothers. What do you think?
I agree with you, man. Before TikTok, before Halo and Call of Duty, we were running through pixelated pipes and jumping on Goombas and hitting bricks. Remember that?
Yeah, I
But here's
remember
the
that.
best
That I
part.
remember Mario. I felt bad for him, like he was hurting his head.
Well, without Super Mario Bros., Nintendo and maybe even console gaming as a whole might not exist in the way that we know it, man.
So let's rewind to the early 80s. The video game crash of 1983. Atari was already out for a while. It was tanking. Games were just flooding the market. Terrible games. So many games. They were just taking over, and nobody really knew what games to buy. And the stores
Mm.
just couldn't give this stuff away because there was just such an influx of just crap out there. You know what I mean?
Now we're talking E.T., the extraterrestrial bad, like literal crap. I played that game. I don't know, dude, I must have been 5 years old.
Oh, it was terrible.
And I wouldn't know that the game sucked and there was no actual ending to it, but damn, that was
Well,
bad.
Nintendo took that game, a little sidebar, and took the remaining copies and dumped it in a landfill.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't
totally
know that.
true. So Nintendo actually started off as a Japanese playing card company, and
Hmm.
they turned into a toy company because they wanted in on the home consoles. But the US retailers were always like, nope, we have already been burned by that already. Stick to cards.
Okay, all right. Well, Nintendo then made a move. They designed the Famicom for Japan, then rebranded it for the US as the Nintendo Entertainment System. I knew it as NES. That's what I remember it. But they needed a killer app, a game so good it would make people believe again.
All right, so before we jump into warp zones and fire flowers, let's talk about something a little more real world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you mean the fact that Mario, our favorite overall wearing plumber? Wait, second. Hold on. Do you like Mario or
Oh,
Luigi better?
oh, is this a competition now?
Yeah,
You
Mario
know
or
what?
Luigi?
I'm actually a Luigi fan.
Me too.
You know, he doesn't get the credit where it's due. You know what I mean?
I like that.
But
Well,
here's the thing. He was named after not Luigi. Mario was named after a real guy. He was, drum roll please, a landlord. Enter Mario Segale.
nice. In the 1980s, and Nintendo of America is just getting started. They're renting this warehouse office space in Tukwila, Washington. I don't know where that is, but business
That's
is
a tough
rough.
one. That's a tough one.
Tuck. It's got to be Tukwila. Business is rough, money's tight, and then boom, the landlord shows up looking for overdue rent. Can you believe it?
And Nintendo wasn't paying their rent, and the landlord, Mario Segale, reportedly gave them a pretty stern talking to about paying up, but he wasn't just some evil villain. He was just a guy trying to run his own business.
Yeah, yeah. Now, here's where it gets funny. Well, at least funny to us. At that time, Nintendo had this new game, Donkey Kong, and the characters we now know as Mario, or the character, was just called Jumpman. And I know that some of you know this already because I've seen little videos of this on TikTok. In fact, I think Nick ran one of these earlier on TikTok and YouTube. But seriously, Jumpman, dude, can you get more creative than that?
Yeah, I mean, you probably can because it's not exactly iconic. But after
Yeah.
that encounter with their landlord, someone at Nintendo said, hey, what if we name him Mario. And just like that, a gaming legend was born. He's got the mustache, the attitude, and now he's got the name.
Nice. And get this, Segale knew he inspired the name, but he never made a big deal about it. He stayed mostly out of the spotlight and once joked in an interview, I'm still waiting for my royalty checks.
Dude, if I were that landlord, I would have cashed in as much as I possibly can. But he passed away in 2018, rest in peace. But he lives on every time we stomp a Goomba or hit a question block. The man didn't design the game, but without Mario Segale, we might still be calling him Jumpman, which would have been a problem for everybody, I think.
Which sounds like a knockoff sneaker, let's be honest. And did Mario really have the real guy have a mustache? That's what I want to know.
He did. He had a mustache. I think
Oh,
he was
you looked
wearing
it up.
yeah, no,
That's
I
good.
looked it all. He looked just like the guy. You know what I mean? Respect to Mario Segale, the unexpected legend behind the icon. So let's jump in even further. Mario Brothers wasn't the first side scroller platformer, but it did set the standard. It had tight controls, clever level design, and the music. Man, that music, that theme song still slaps to this day.
Yep, yep. Koji Kondo was a legend. He composed that theme song so it matched Mario's run cycle. Talk about detail.
Yeah, the game was hard, but it was fair. It taught you how to play without any instructions. Like literally, you open the the game console, you open the game cartridge, no instructions on how to play this game, no instructions on the screen at all. You had to figure it all out. And that first Goomba was basically a built-in lesson on how to defeat the villains.
Very true. And warp zones, you find one secret tunnel and suddenly you're skipping half the game. It
Dude, that
rewarded,
was the best.
well, the thing is, it rewarded curiosity, not just reflexes. And I think that's what people were excited about. It's like, what else don't
Yeah,
I know?
what's down this pipe? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Mario became more than just a game character. He became a full-on icon. He had lunch boxes, cartoons, even let's say a unique live action movie. Remember that movie with
And I
John
loved
Leguizamo?
that movie. I don't know what you're
Oh
talking.
my gosh. Well,
That
listen,
was
dude,
so good.
you loved that.
I
Wow.
loved it so much. It was with Louis Guzamo, right?
John Leguizamo,
Yeah, yeah.
Bob
And then,
Hoskins.
dude,
Uh, you just told
I
all
loved
of
it.
our two viewers that you loved the Super Mario Brothers movie.
It was. I'd watch it over and over. I loved that movie.
I'm just going to pretend that never happened because by 1990, Mario was more recognizable to kids than Mickey Mouse. That is crazy, dude. Crazy. Well, Mickey Mouse didn't have a video game, so, well,
True. It's
yeah,
hard to
maybe he does
explain
now.
to Gen Z how big this really was. Mario made gaming cool, period. And I think he or the brand really took this whole industry to a brand new level of what could be possible, right? And then
Yeah, for
paved the
sure.
way for Zelda and Metroid, and then N64's GoldenEye, which was legendary, right?
That was a great one. That was a great one. Yeah, my kids were playing, and my kids were playing GoldenEye this over the weekend, so they discovered that. Now
Just
we're getting into our segment that we like to call the final boss thoughts.
mm,
Yeah. Before we wrap, let's hit you with a few fun facts that we didn't tell
go.
you during the actual full podcast. Mario was originally meant to ride a dinosaur in the first game, but they
Oh,
didn't have the technology to create what later became Yoshi.
I didn't know that.
And the reason why they chose a dinosaur was because the creator of Mario Brothers, had a infatuation with dinosaurs as a kid, and always thought that it would be cool to put a little dinosaur in a game to be someone's pet. The Minus World was a legendary glitch level that basically was an underwater loop of doom, and Mario's iconic mustache was not something they decided he should have. It was purely a graphical design. They couldn't draw a mouth at that pixel size, so they just made it a mustache. And sometimes, what does that tell you, Tristan? What does it tell
I
you?
don't know. What does
It
that tell
tells
me?
you that
We all need a mustache?
the charm of early games, creativity, we're gonna have to cut this one out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cut that part
that's your
out.
line there. What does that tell you?
Uh, hold on. Pause that one.
Oh yeah, you're saying that's the charm of early games creativity
Got it.
because of limitations.
I was so curious about what you were saying. I was looking up more facts.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah, I was. I was like, wait, I didn't know that.
Lots of good
I
stuff.
sidetracked. All right. Go ahead. Repeat that one and then we'll
Yeah.
cut it there.
Okay, and Mario's iconic mustache was not a decision that they made because they wanted him to have a mustache. It was purely graphical because they couldn't draw a mouth at that pixel size. Back then they didn't have the tech. So they made it a mustache instead.
That's the charm of early games. Creativity because of limitations. I mean,
Exactly.
think
What?
of how many other things they couldn't do. So they're like, how do we get around
Well,
this? Right.
as we go on with these games, as we start talking about these games, you're going to find out there's a lot more of that happened in the early days. And that's why we started this podcast because these stories are pure magic.
All right, that's a wrap of episode 1 of Pixels Past. If you loved Super Mario Bros. Or learned something new today, which I did, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow retro nerds and geeks.
Yeah, and leave a comment and just let us know what game we should cover next. We've got Zelda, Contra, Sonic, Mega Man. You said GoldenEye earlier. So many more on deck. So you're going to want to stay tuned for the early. Oh, you're going to want to stay tuned for the origin stories of those popular games that set the standard for video games that we play today.
Until next time, blow that cartridge. Press
Remember
start.
that, dude? Blow on that cartridge. You get the. Apparently, that did nothing.
Hey, it did it for me. I got lightheaded one time. I remember that.
What?
Anyway, blow that cartridge, press start, and stay pixel perfect.
Later on, Pixlers.